We've got our deer quartered. Now we're ready to finish the process and debone it. You know, this is where a lot of hunters get intimidated because they think that that process is very complicated. But rest assured, it's quite easy if you know just a few tips of the trade. Now, good starting point obviously is what you're going to use. Today we're using the Game Pro processing kit. It's got a lot of great knives. One I'm going to focus on a lot today is their fillet knife. It's a 6-inch blade, fantastic for pretty much all the cuts you're going to make. Okay, we're going to start with the easiest cut of meat and kind of work our way up to the more complicated ones. By far the easiest piece of meat to work with is the tenderloin. The only trick to a tenderloin is when you pull it out in its entirety, you've got a connected piece associated with it. And that piece just needs to be pulled off, and that basically makes the whole tenderloin. That piece is great for, you know, chopping up for stir fry or just throw it into your grind. All right, the next cut of meat we're going to work with is the backstrap, and that's a favorite of the Murphy household year round. And really it comes with minimal knife work needed, but we do have to do a couple of things. First, if you pull it over to the underside of the backstrap, you're going to find a seam and kind of an attached partial piece here. Using your hands, you can kind of pull that out. You can see I've got some silver skin in there. That's really not part of the true backstrap muscle itself, so we're just going to trim that off nice and easy. Comes along the length, almost the entire length of the backstrap. I just toss it in my grind. You can chop it up finer than that and put it in stir fry or in stews, whatever your favorite is. So now I've got the backstrap, but now the biggest challenge we have is to remove this silver skin. If you don't do that, it'll be chewier than boot leather, and I promise you, you don't want to eat it. So most hunters traditionally would try to cut it off with the silver skin facing them. And that's really the hardest way, in fact, by far the most difficult way. So what I've learned over the years, particularly using a flexible fillet knife, this is key, and having an edge of the table as I've got here, is to put my backstrap close to me here and to cut off about the section of backstrap that we like to eat at our household. And that's about 6 or 8 inches. That makes about 3 or 4 portions. So if you come in to about whatever that portion is, say 6-inch cut, go straight down to that silver skin. At that point, turn your knife completely horizontal to you're basically running along that silver skin, and just with downward pressure, just work your knife along. Again, fillet knife is absolutely key, and come right out to the end. You can see, removes that silver skin nicely, and this piece at the end often will hang on you just a little bit, so you can come back and cut that last little bit off nice and easy. Such. And some of that you can obviously put into trim. It's not so tough you can't put it into your grinder pile. And it's good stuff. Again, just a real quick demo. Come in about 6 inches, go down, hit your backstrap, turn your knife, fillet it right along there just like you would be filleting a fish. And as you get to the center of the backstrap, it actually gets cleaner and easier, as you see there. Nice and clean, done in just a matter of seconds. And once you get to the very end, I like to turn it around. I'm right-handed, so I like to always work to my right. Go ahead and cut this last section off. And so now I've got, you know, 3 nice pieces of backstrap. And there is a little bit of meat here left on this. I wouldn't grind this part, it's too tough. You can just run your knife along there and cut that last little bit up, you know, nice and easy, just trim it right off. So that's a backstrap. Okay, so the next cut of meat we're going to tackle is the neck roast. And if you're in an area that doesn't have CWD and you're not transporting the animal, then you have the option of keeping it whole. In this case, it's off a buck, so it's quite large. I would recommend cutting it into 2 or 3 sections and leaving vertebrae in for a great pot roast. And trust me, the meat on the neck is fantastic flavor. An old butcher once taught me that the flavor of an animal is best on the front end and decreases as you work backwards. So therefore, the neck is fantastic quality and flavor. Now, since we're in a CWD area and we cannot transport this neck because the vertebrae, potentially if it's an infected animal, contains the infectious CWD material. So in this case, we're going to have to debone it and use it for grind or stew meat once we get home. The easiest way to do this, and of course the first thing we did was remove the lower portion which contains the esophagus and trachea of the animal, the windpipe and the food pipe. So those have already been removed. That's this section underneath here. And so if you feel, you can actually see an indentation here right along the neck. If you just cut down to the vertebrae, you hit that, and just basically start to peel it. Just peel it almost like an onion back towards you, just working against the bone. And you want to take it off as efficiently as you can. Obviously, time is everything when you're trying to, particularly we're always in a hurry trying to get back to our homes after a long hunting trip. You don't want to spend a lot of time skinning. So the quicker you can do it and right the first time, the better off you'll be. Again, just following the bone itself. And with the neck, because there's so many cracks and crevices, you're not going to get all the meat no matter what you do here, because it's just the way of the structure of the neck. And that's why it makes such a good neck roast. Once those vertebrae fall apart, the meat just falls right out. There we go. So we have our neck vertebrae here. Again, you can take some time and trim a little extra meat off that if you are fortunate enough to be able to cook that or boil it up. Makes great stock. Lots of ways to use that. And this is a good way to also use make a rolled roast out of it. You've already got it rolled out the way you've trimmed it off there. You can cut it in thinner sheets and wrap it up with cream cheese, bacon, jalapenos, whatever you want, and really impress your friends. All right, the next cut we're going to tackle is the rear leg. And for many hunters, this is really intimidating because it really looks complex and they don't want to mess up. And obviously, you want good quality, neat looking products that look like you know what you're doing. Good thing about a whitetail, any animal you might break down, is that if you just take the time to look, you'll actually see the seams. They give you a perfect roadmap to follow just by looking at where the different muscles start and stop. First thing you want to do is just using your fingers. Often it'll have just a little bit of a protective layer on it. And if you have the ability to pull that back and get some of that off of there, if there's any superficial dirt or hair from your skinning and cleaning process, that's a good way to get some of that off of there. So first thing I look for is, this is the sirloin tip. We'll talk about the muscle groups in a minute, but you'll see a nice seam running right between it and the bottom round. So just by using your knife to get started. And the good thing about this is you can use your fingers a lot in this process. And that will help you make sure you make the right cuts. So you're just working with your hands, pulling apart wherever you can. Use your knife intermittently just to help you work along the seams. And as you start breaking those muscle groups apart, again, you can just see nice and easy once you get in here where these muscles start and stop. You do have a lymph node right here at the base of the top round and basically the lower leg, and you want to pull that out. Particularly with CWD areas, the lymph nodes are often where some of that infectious material resides, and also you just don't want that in your food. You can see I've cut through that there. You want to just see that? That's a lymph node. You want to just get that out. You don't want that in your food regardless of CWD. Okay. Again, using the same process here. Turn that around, you can see it a little bit better. And on this one, you're actually going to use the femur as your guide. Cut that along. This one runs right along. This is your bottom round. Big cut of meat. Okay, so we got our bottom round. Okay, so we're down to really just a couple of 3 main cuts left. Any of this extra stuff here you can just take right off. Okay, this back here on the back end of the animal, right at the end of your sirloin tip, is the rump roast. On a whitetail, they're very small. Rump roast, though, is fantastic. Some of the most tender, tasteful meat you'll have on the animal. So what you want to do with that is simply take your knife right off the back of that last ball joint and just cut straight through. It'll actually come with a different little piece of meat associated with it that's not the rump. You just cut that right off. That goes into your trim pile. And there's your rump. Again, the rump on a whitetail is very small, but the meat is fantastic quality. So be sure to save that for stews, special occasions where you really want a tender cut of meat in something like a stew. Next cut will be to remove the sirloin tip. Some people call it the football roast because it looks a little bit like a football. Very easy to do now that we've got all the other muscle groups removed. Just come in and take your knife, come straight in to the bone, come down the bone to the other end, spin it around here, come through down to the bone again, and come down the other side. Using that femur as your guide, getting as much of it as you can, and then come back lastly and slide it right down the bone. And there you go. There's your sirloin tip. Most people would use this in a roast. I love it as a roast. I do not prefer it as sliced steaks as much as some of the other cuts. It's just not quite, it's a finer grain cut and it's gonna be just a little bit tougher. So I recommend roast for the sirloin tip. The last step is to remove the shank meat. Now this is full of tendons and ligaments. It's gonna be super chewy. It's really only useful for grind except in one situation. That is to braise it very slowly in the oven for several hours. If you do, all those tendons and ligaments will just dissolve. It'll be some of the most tasteful possible meat you've ever tasted. Now, you can cut it into sections and do a similar cooking style. It's called ossobuco, very common these days. Most hunters, I hate to say in the past, would have thrown this part away. I don't, but in this case, I'll go ahead and take it off the bone and put it in my grind. All right, our last cut of meat is the front shoulder. And again, this is a very flavorful part of the deer, but one that is often very chewy and very tough, so a lot of people put it in the grind, and that's a fine use. There are a couple of roasts you can get out of it as well. The blade roast is a fantastic roast. We're gonna go ahead and debone it today because that's what most hunters do. The trick to deboning a front shoulder is identifying where the shoulder blade is. Everybody's heard of the blade. What is that? Simply just a kind of a mountain ridge that runs along the side of the deer's front leg and shoulder here. So if you just use your fingers, you'll feel it. What you're trying to do is cut right along that, just like you would along the backbone on a backstrap. And you'll find your knife just kind of guide along. And you can come down. And once you hit the blade, just the shoulder blade itself, just turn your knife, come with it. And again, if you're putting it in the grind, it doesn't really matter how pretty your job is here. But again, efficiency is the key if you're in a hurry or just want to do it as quick as possible. All right, so you can see I've exposed the wide part of the shoulder blade itself, and you can just use your knife to go straight down through it when you get there. So you can see I've got an open shoulder blade there, and just sticking the knife up, I can come straight down to the bone, take it right off the joint with that piece. So you got a lot of options with that. And then I'd basically do the reverse on the other side. Again, using the shoulder blade, the high part of the shoulder blade is my guide. Just come down the edge of it, work my way around this little bit of a corner spot. Turn it around where you can see it a little bit. Again, just taking it right off of the blade itself. Okay, got one last little piece to do, and that's underneath. Using a nice flexible blade like I have here with this fillet knife, just come straight along the underside of it and take this meat right off the back of the blade. Again, I could have cut through that, made just a bone-in roast. Could have had a lot of other things to do with it, but in this case, just cleaning the blade up like that. Again, with your shanks, you can use that as part of your grind. You can use it in ossobuco, but if you're going to cook it as a primary meal, you're going to want to cook it low and slow for several hours until those heavy tendons and ligaments break down. Okay, we finished quartering and deboning white-tailed deer. Wasn't that hard, was it? I want to go quickly over the final cuts. This is what you're looking for at the end of the day. All your primal cuts ready to go. Got our pile of grind meat here, some extra grind meat here. Of course, our backstraps. Backstraps you want to cook on the grill primarily. That's how they're most used for steaks. If you're looking at your tenderloins, these are again best cooked just like they are whole on a grill is probably the best way with your favorite marinade, of course. This is a deboned neck. The neck is great for stews, a number of different things. You can use it as a roast as well. One of the best tasting parts of the animal, particularly used as a roast. Out of the back legs, we've got the top and bottom round. This can be used for steaks. It's a coarser, both muscles are kind of used interchangeably in terms of how you cook them. Again, coarse meat, I like to use it for jerky, for steaks, and for grind. Here we've got our sirloin tip or the football roast. That's best used in my opinion. If you're not going to grind it, would be a standalone roast. Fantastic, cooked low and slow. At the very front here, we have our two rump steaks off the back end of the back leg. Again, very tender, very flavorful. I like it in stir fry, anything that you really want to present the quality of venison, almost similar to backstrap in that regard. Really, really good. Finally, we have our shoulder meat taken off as sheets. You can grind it. Most people do grind it, but it is very flavorful. So consider putting it in stews or other uses such as a rolled roast. So the next time you harvest a deer, hopefully you'll have a little more confidence that you can quarter and debone it properly and make that table fare the envy of all your family and friends.